Brian Fam.
And today we will be talking about an influencer and entrepreneur that was kind of forgotten for a while or unrecognized for a while. And his name is Owen Freeman.
Ogle Winston Link. Ogle Winston Link Photography. He was born December 16th, 1914. Then, similarly, he died January 30th, 2001, at the age of 87 years old. He was American. He had a brother and sister, and he lived and died in New York. He went to school in manual arts in Brooklyn.
Owen Freeman Photography was his business, and the main purpose of taking these photographies and eventually later on audio recordings was to get the final days of steam on the Norfolk and Western Railroad Company, which was mainly a coal railroad that ran through West Virginia. And eventually later on, once, maybe right around the 70s or 80s, when he was done recording and everything like that, um, him and some of his partners realized that they had really also photographed a way of life that was a lot more simpler and in some ways a lot more beautiful than it is today. And if you look at the image here on to the right of the slide, this is one of the more famous photos of a drive-in movie theater and a couple that you see there leaning in together, and there's a Norfolk and Western freight train going by in the background. And none of his photos were timed or anything like that. He was just there at the right moment and just took a photo.
Innovation. So, during the 50s, Winston had noticed a change in the railroad motive power. In terms of that, we're talking about the locomotives. It's how during this day and age they were using steam locomotives, but a new thing came up, the diesel locomotive. And the diesel locomotive was better and more affordable to those that needed it for trains and stuff like that. And so, in the last 6 years of the steam locomotive, they used that time to photograph and record the sounds of the steam from Chicago, New York, Louisiana, and of course West Virginia. Coal country.
Alright, okay. Mr. Link had never been paid to take any of the photos and videos and sounds of the different railroad companies such as Norfolk and Western, New Jersey Central, the Southern Railway, and so on and so forth. Uh, so he has done this all for free, and the railroads were a lot more, how do I put it, were a lot more friendly to the general public, and the reason being was because a lot of the towns really respected the railroad, and at this time when steam engines were being scrapped, there were a lot of people who decided to own steam engines that started to notice this, and the railroads kind of, some of them anyway, used it as a marketing tool to bring more attention to their railroad companies, and that brought a lot more um, price ranges up in freight shipping because there were a lot of business people that were interested in the technology that made a steam engine move. Um, so there were some people that were attracted by that, and so some railroads actually kept steam locomotives and continued operating them. However, there was only maybe two or three that did that. But aside from all that, Link and his crew had photographed just normal people doing their everyday thing, um, just around the railroad tracks, mainly of the Norfolk and Western Railroad, or the N&W as other people call it. And in this picture on the right, you'll see a group of teens at a swimming pool in the coal mining town of Welch, West Virginia. And these people were paid to wait in the middle of the night, sometimes up to 3 hours, in freezing cold water just for a train to pass by, and for this random guy to get a photo of it. And some of these photos were done with natural lighting, and other ones, Link had created these uh, pretty advanced light fixtures to take the quote unquote perfect photo at the time. So,
Depictions in media. O. Winston Lee was known for his black and white photos, as in presented in the 50s, and those photos of trains, of steam locomotives back then in the 50s, as in the past 6 years, as we mentioned earlier in the other site I was talking about. And also as recordings as well, as the final days of steam powered locomotives throughout the Midwestern, Eastern, and South portions of the U.S.
and what Winston noticed until 1983 when he started really actually publishing more and more books with his photos in it. And ever since then, people just fell in love with his work. And uh, he started kind of reaching out towards other people and getting his photos and into magazines and things like that. And he wound up in a couple news broadcasting uh, or live. He wound up on the news basically, and in some cases the radio, depending on where people were from. But um, he would mention where he got these photos and videos, and he would remember where he was at that time, and what train it was, and things like that. And when he started mentioning these places, people started going out there to see how much of it had really changed since the 1950s. And if you know West Virginia coal country, it doesn't always change too much. So a lot of the old buildings that he photographed were still standing. Granted, they were a little old and dusty, but and falling apart, but they were still there, and a lot of the people in the photos were still there as well, living in their small town. Just the only thing that really changed was the railroad companies and steam locomotives no longer running. And he inspired a lot of people to really mimic his photos and or his photo style, I should say. And a lot of museums had opened up because of uh, the places that he had photoed and the certain trains that he had photographed. And of course, I was one of those people inspired since I'm in part of the railroad hobby. And this is one of my own personal photos to the right here on this side. This was taken at downtown Fullerton Station, and in my opinion, it's not the best photo, but it's the best I can get at night with natural lighting. And this is just a regular chemical train, so it has toxic chemicals like molten phenol, gasoline, other things like that. And sometimes they go pretty fast, and I managed to get a pretty clear image of the rails and the signals, and then you have this big blur cylinder or big black line that's kind of fuzzy at the center when everything else is more clear. And usually some of his photos are like that, and I just kind of got inspired by that at night. So now to awards and honors, and on the left side you will see, of course, much 1990s, I believe. Yeah, 1999, I think it was. Owen Link, and he was 85 years old in this movie scene. And for those of you that went to Orangeview, or have seen the film October Sky, this is actually one of the scenes when the Rocket Boys, as they're called, tear up the tracks, and of course they get a big railroad scare when they think that they're about to derail a train. But Owen Link, for those that didn't know, is actually the driver of the locomotive for this scene. Now he wasn't actually driving the engine, but difference. Alright, I'm gonna cut this part out. Brian, what's that one guy's name from the Marvel movies? He has a bunch of cameos.
Stanley.
Stanley, there.
To continue, after he had died on January 30th, 2001, and his memorial of all his work on the steam engine and steam locomotives of the last days of steam engines. Although Winston was given a museum so people could actually pass by and look at all his work that he's done before and what he and recorded as well. Correct? Yeah. Spot on the big screen. And you see at the picture at the bottom over there, you can see the museum that features him.
Alright, and then that was our presentation on Owen Finley. So I hope that you all enjoy, and we're pretty much just gonna say bye now.